Well, hey, congratulations, you two, for The Believer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was such a psychological thrill in so many different ways. Really put you trying to guess on what's actually going on for it.
Good. That's the hope. Yeah.
So let's start off with the easy question for both of you. What initially attracted you to do a movie like The Believer? Who wants to start?
Go ahead, Soph. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, I love that your cat's. You got a little cute cat in the who's sort of
Yeah, somehow they just know when I'm doing Zoom and they like to enter the picture.
Yeah. Great. I really love elevated horror, the genre of elevated horror films. I thought this was a really smart script. I also love that it was character driven, which is rare. No, I don't want to say it's rare, but it's unique to the horror genre. And I think that it felt like a very sort of grounded situation or story, but then it was brought into this sort of elevated horror world. So it was really unique. I had never sort of read or seen anything like it, except for maybe, I don't even know, Rosemary's Baby, but that's so long ago. And so I felt like it was very fresh, and that's sort of what excited me the most.
What about for you, Aidan?
Well, for me, it was mostly just wanting to work with friends. So Sean's a dear friend of mine. He actually cast me in one of the first movies that I did when I moved out to Los Angeles, a film called Forest of the Living Dead. And then after that, we just loved working together. We ended up working on 4 plays together after that he directed me in and that I produced and acted in. And so we just had like a really great shorthand, and we were just sitting in my dining room, on my dining room table, we were at my dining room table, not sitting on top of it. But we were sitting there just wanting to find something that we could work together on and could do it cheaply, relatively cheaply, and keep it all in one location. And we were just talking about horror films that we liked that were similar to that all took place in one location. He came up with this idea. And Sean's background, he's a novelist. He's a ghostwriter for James Patterson. He recently had a book that he co-wrote with him that was a New York Times bestseller. And so what he's really good at is taking a premise and an idea and then banging out a novel or a script. And so once we came up with the premise, he went off and wrote the first draft. And Sophie's an old friend of mine from acting class, and we wanted to work together on something for a while. And so I had Sean and Sophie meet, and the rest is history.
Wow, that is pretty awesome. For both of you, have you done the horror genre before? Because as Aidan, it sounds like you have done horror before.
Yeah, I'm just a gun for hire, so I wouldn't try to represent that I have any sort of leverage right now to pick and choose as much as I would like to. But yes, horror films tend to sell really well in the marketplace, and so there tends to be a lot of them out there at various budgets. And especially in my first few years when I was just getting started and just wanting to get experience, I tended to work on a lot of horror films and horror titles. So that really was helpful, because I'm, as well as Sophie, I'm a producer on this project. And so kind of accumulating all that knowledge and experience from working on those other films and seeing what worked and didn't work from all aspects of production, not just during filming, but also post. And even at this point in the selling of the film, there was a lot of cool lessons I learned that have been helpful and useful.
Sophie, is this your first horror project, or you have done horror before?
I've done a lot of thrillers. I would say this is the first sort of outright or elevated horror. But I've done psychological thrillers before, but this felt a little different. But every experience has sort of their new their new excitements about them. But yeah, it didn't feel so crazy. A lot of the cool effects, I have to say, were put in during post. So at the time, and obviously you're in it, you're in costume, you're so in that world. So I sort of went at the character as just a normal person who had lost her child and was sort of struggling with her relationship, and and then everything else sort of gets mixed in with that. But I think that I sort of approached her like any other character I would, whether it be a thriller or a drama or comedy.
Sophie, I do have to admit, your character was kind of, I want to say freaky in her own little way. How did you get in the headspace of your character? I mean, that must have been something.
You know, it's interesting. I think that I think probably the first thing I did was not to judge her. I think that once you start judging the people that you play, you get into really tricky territory. I think that I had to really love her and really sort of understand where she was coming from the best I could. And I think once I got into that mindset, it changed everything for me, because I wasn't sort of looking at her from the lens of Sophie. I was Violet. I was in her sort of, you know, from her perspective, there's like a rule, everything is sort of very straight and narrow. There's a right and there's a wrong, and there's a way you should be doing things, and there's a way that you shouldn't be doing things. And I think that this made a lot of sense to me, or to her rather, you know, in the scheme of things. So it's funny because I think that you know, I think that it's funny because the audience sort of says, like, sees her as sort of this crazy person, but I actually really love her. I hope it's thinking about me, but yeah, I love her. I think that she's complicated, and people are complicated, so.
Well, for you, Aidan, you didn't have a simple character either. Your character, your paranoia was flying all over the place. How did you get in the headspace of your character then?
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep in mind, I felt like Lucas is kind of the eyes of the audience a little bit. And so as Lucas is figuring things out, hopefully the audience is trying to figure things out with him. Yeah, like he's down on his luck. His body's deteriorating. He doesn't have a job. He's in therapy, trying to fix this relationship where this horrific thing has happened, and he's trying to make sense of all of it. And so for me, honestly, getting in the headspace of it really came through the rehearsal process. Sean and I and Sophie worked together for almost 4 months, every single week, rehearsing every single week, every single scene. We kind of locked down and what we were going to do. And, you know, most of it, locking it in early was for practical reasons, just because we had a short shoot schedule. And so there wasn't a lot of time on set to explore things. But a lot of it during the exploration process and rehearsal was also having those discussions and trying to figure out, oh, okay, what's just happened before this scene? How am I going to tap into it emotionally so that even if I've shot 7 scenes prior to this scene on that day, I know exactly what emotional state to tap into so that I'm ready. And so it's just a lot of note taking during rehearsal and being very clear prior to each scene what the emotional state is, and then remembering that. And so on the day of, it's just, you know, a little bit of an imagination process to get tapped in.
Aidan, your character, because your character has to go back and forth quite a bit. How was the filming process actually worked? Obviously, it's not chronological order.
Yeah, exactly. So it was all shot out of order for sure. The first few days, and a lot of productions do this, you try to start with some easy scenes and just to get everyone kind of warmed up with one another. And then from then on, it was a lot of the more bulky dialogue scenes. But yeah, out of order, like you said. I think what helped me is just kind of knowing where Sean was coming from writing it, and Sean wanted Lucas to be someone who's really fighting for this relationship to survive, right? And so I think Lucas ultimately has more hope than he knows what to do with, and he's putting a lot of pressure on himself to try and find a way to have him and Violet be able to still be with one another and happily ever after, and maybe start a family down the line. And so for me, I just kept tapping on, as crazy as everything got, as much as maybe some audience members might see some of the events unfold and be like, I would have gotten the hell out of there. I kept tapping into Lucas's desire and need to want to make the relationship work. I made this commitment to this woman that I want to be with her. And so that entails working through problems like this. And so that was kind of like at the core of Lucas, I feel.
Sophie, you had some complicated dialogues, especially, you know, through verses and rituals and chants and so on. How did you actually get through those?
I think that, I owe a lot to the rehearsal process. Again, not to rant continually talk about that, but I love rehearsal. I think it's such a proponent of getting to really exercise and try lots of things so that by the time you get to set, it's almost like a dance. Like we all know the same steps, but it gives us more freedom to sort of improvise, although we didn't really improvise in terms of dialogue, but in terms of nuances, you get to, because you know exactly what you're doing, you can, it frees you up so that you can really explore moments. It just takes off so much pressure because you know what you're doing. Aidan and I were sort of on the same page, and Sean were all on the same page. So when we're like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. It was almost like we didn't even need to talk to each other at that point. We knew exactly what was going on. There was no sort of, in a way, you do all the work so you can let it go. And I think that that's a really fortunate thing to do. I think it makes your work stronger because you're starting from like a higher place rather than sort of like stumbling upon it and sort of like tripping around. I think because you know exactly what you're doing fundamentally, but then you also have the hair and makeup and costume and nerves of just being, we're doing it. It allows you to sort of, it feels fresh, even though ultimately you really do know what's going on.
Aidan, you had a chance to work quite a bit with Billy Zane. How was that like? And Sophie, did you get to meet Billy?
Yeah, I was on set that day. I didn't get to work with him, but I got to watch them.
Aidan.
Billy was great. I mean, as I'm sure a lot of people are, I've been a fan of his work for a long time, and I've been seeing him since before I even had a thought of maybe trying to be an actor. I was a fan of his in massive movies. And so what was great about Billy too, he was really generous with his time. He contractually didn't have to do this at all, but he gave us a rehearsal day a couple days before a shoot. And we just sat in a conference room. We went through all the scenes, and him and Sean really talked about his character and how he fits into the story. And he got really excited about, how integral his character was within our story as a whole. And when it came to the actual day to show up, he was prepared, he was really professional, and he was just a total pro. And for me, that was just such a treat. Again, being such a fan and getting to share the screen with him, I felt very fortunate.
Excellent. Well, let me leave with one more thought with the both of you. Obviously, we're speaking, virtually right now because the world has gone crazy, but at least we're recovering at this point. But during the past year, how did you actually kept your sanity and creativeness during this whole time? Who wants to start?
Sophie, go for
it. Great question. I am in pre-production for my first feature, my directorial debut. So it's been a little tough because we were supposed to go last spring, and then we pushed to the fall, and then moved to the UK, and then Tier 5 lockdown happened in the UK, and the new strand happened in the winter. Now we're shooting the spring, but that's been amazing because I'm very prepared. I couldn't be more prepared, but at the same time, I'm excited. I'm excited just to get out there. But yeah, I'm excited for the world to slowly but surely, it looks like we're getting back some sort of semblance of normalcy soon. So it's really just staying positive, which is hard.
Excellent. Aidan?
Yeah, I do quite a bit of work in video games and in animated TV shows and films and stuff. So luckily for me, even during lockdown, I was able to stay pretty busy and working. I've converted one of my walk-in closets at my place into like a full-on soundproof studio. And so I got to just through Zoom and an iPad connect with directors and producers and have sessions in my closet. And I got to work on Halo last year and a little bit this year. I just wrapped that up, and that comes out later this year, which should be a great game and has a really cool story that I felt very grateful to be a part of. And then I started another video game in just a couple of weeks that I've been already did some like kind of rehearsals and stuff for. So yeah, for me, I was just lucky in that sense. I'd already had like dipped the toe in like the video game and voiceover world. So that kept me pretty busy over the last year.
That's excellent news for both of you. Well, once again, congratulations for The Believer. And thank you for this conversation with me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time watching it and chatting with us.
Hey, not a problem. Next time. All right.
Thanks so
Cheers.
much.
Bye, guys.